I want to welcome everybody to the first official subcommittee on federal lands in the 119th Congress. Last Congress, the subcommittee continued its bipartisan tradition by sending more than 15 separate pieces of legislation to the president's desk. In fact, if federal lands were counted as a full committee, it would have tied for the fourth most productive committee in the House last Congress. This is also based on a conservative estimate, since we're not counting the numerous other bills signed into law through comprehensive packages like the Explore Act. As we begin our important work in this new Congress, this subcommittee will work with the Trump administration and the new Republican Senate majority to restore multiple use to our public lands, empower local communities, and revitalize rural economies. And there's much work to be done. President Biden left America's public lands and natural resources in a sorry state. For 4 long years, President Biden and his federal land managers abandoned the long-standing and previously uncontroversial principle of multiple use. Instead, they adopted top-down preservationist schemes designed to placate extreme environmentalists. Along the way, Biden's officials never seemed to notice or care that their reckless policies were inflicting enormous damage on America's rural economy, housing affordability, energy dominance, and national security. While virtually no American was spared by President Biden's irresponsible natural resource policies, the harm was felt most acutely out west. Growing urban centers like Salt Lake City and Las Vegas suffer from exorbitant housing and rental prices, largely because they are encircled by federal land. Rural communities are facing economic devastation as generations-old grazing and logging businesses have had to shut down due to ruinous regulations. And on top of all that, the Democrats' profligate spending brought us the highest inflation in 40 years, which disproportionately hurt rural residents. The startling scope and arrogance of these policies were laid bare by the Biden administration's 30 by 30 agenda. Under this initiative, federal land managers sought to lock up at least 30% of the nation's land and waters by 2030. Seldom remarked was the fact that the federal government already owns 640 million acres, or roughly 28% of the nation's land mass, including nearly 50% of the land out west. The 30 by 30 initiative then was simply a misleading attempt to justify further land grabs. 30 by 30 was consistently cited when the Biden administration designated new national monuments or announced ill-advised mineral withdrawals. Under glaring abuses of the Antiquities Act, the former president sealed off nearly 6 million acres in California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. Adding insult to injury, the federal land managers who planned and implemented these national monuments often displayed sneering disregard for local opinion. Again and again, local officials and residents reported that their questions and concerns had been deflected or ignored. This was also true of the BLM's public lands rule, which overturned the long-standing statutory precedent of multiple use and sustained yield. The rule empowers environmental groups and foreign entities to purchase so-called conservation leases and thereby lock up millions of acres of public lands intended for multiple use. Despite repeated requests to hold more in-person listening sessions from members across this dais in western states, the Biden administration refused to do so and pushed this rule forward over the objections of governors, local officials, ranchers, recreationalists, and countless others. Similar issues plagued the resource management plans issued by Biden's bureaucrats. In Colorado, Utah, Montana, North Dakota, and Wyoming, the BLM used resource management plans to prohibit energy production, limit economic activity, and block traditional access. And yet again, federal land managers simply dismissed local outrage. These examples lead to an inescapable conclusion. When bureaucrats in Washington turn their backs on multiple use, they also turn their backs on the American people. Thankfully, a unified Republican government means that relief is now at hand. Instead of ignoring local voices, we are putting Western communities back in the driver's seat to shape the land and resource policies that affect their lives. Further, committee Republicans will ensure that federal land managers understand that under our watch, coordination will always require attentive, good faith, and meaningful engagement with local communities. The days of ignoring and downplaying stakeholders' concerns are over.